Hi. Do you all remember that moment of wonder when you were children and you saw something, a vision that inspired you to do something new? To read a new book, sing a new song, play a new musical instrument. As adults, we forget the power that vision has to inspire us to perform as humans on endeavours to get stuff done. It doesn't matter whether you're building a bridge, you're putting on a new play at the Amateur Dramatic Society, or planning a Christmas party. All these things are projects, both in our public and our private lives. So what I'm going to do in this talk is give you some top tips for making your projects, either at work or in your personal life, more human. The first one is that regain your childlike sense of wonder. Have a clear vision for your project. Paint out how things are going to improve for all the people that you're involving in your project. Sketch out the landscape of your project, the direction the team are going to move in, the technology you're going to use. But right at the centre of all of this, you have human beings and where the human beings are within that journey that's moving forward. That's the vision statement for a project. Now, how many of you have projects in your business lives? How many are involved in projects at work? I certainly am. About half of you. What about your personal lives? Are you planning a new car, holiday, something? Virtually everyone's hands are up. Did you do a bit of research on the internet to do this project? All the hands remain up. Now, be honest. Did you do a bit too much research on the internet? Did you procrastinate? Did you spend, you can put your hands down now. I think you did, didn't you? Spent a bit too much time thinking about all of the possibilities rather than actually engaging with maybe the people who that party was for, who were going to use the bridge, who were going to be involved in the Amateur Dramatic Society. Talk to people first. So the example I have here in the photo is of a child. When you give a child one of these newfangled electric pianos, do they start playing music and play with the keys? No, the first thing they reach for are these buttons, all the extra special effects, right? All the built-in songs, the sound effects, and so on. So this first tip is stop fiddling with the technology and looking at all the technical options. Sure, you should look at technical options, but the first and most important thing is to work with others. Get your team together and get into a rhythm and interact with the other people in your team, whether it's your family, the local amateur dramatic society, the people at work, or it could be a very large project to work involving even hundreds of people. Get them into a regular rhythm of work, working towards that vision. You see how I'm building up the human interactions here. The next thing is about TV remote controls. And I love this remote control. In fact, it's got 3 buttons too many. All I really want to do is go forwards. Occasionally, I might want to go backwards. A bit like a car, you need to use reverse from time to time. I've got no idea what the up and down buttons do. And my TV remote at home is even worse. How many people have actually, not many hands are going to go up here, I expect. How many people have read the instruction manual for their TV remote control? There's one geek. Well done. I love that. Read all the documentation. 99% of human beings do not read the documentation, right? So what they do is they explore. You're given a new remote control, you ask something basic, go forwards. I expect this one means go backwards. I didn't actually ask about that, but it would be intuitive, wouldn't it, to go backwards and then forwards. So you go backwards, oh yeah, it goes backwards, and then forwards. So you learn intuitively by using a model of something or actually using the end product rather than reading a specification about it. If you write too much text and you expect people to read that, they're not going to. Because as you can see in this photograph here, a lot of text is boring. Does she look engaged? No, she doesn't, does she? Do you think she's going to get any insight as to what this project's about and whether it will work for her? No. Okay. So the next top tip here is don't give people lots of documentation to read. Give them a model. So what we have here is a model toy. You're going to give them a model toy to play with so that they can play and interact with it and understand how it's going to work. It could be any sort of model. It could be models like this, photographs and pictures. It could be a computer game that they play to understand how a new project's going to work. It could be architectural drawings that imagine how they would be situated in a new building. It could even be a spreadsheet, which gives you an idea of how to play with the numbers. You play with the numbers on a spreadsheet. These are all play words rather than analysis words. And that's a way of getting human beings involved in your project. The next thing I want to talk about is contracts. Contracts are a form of documentation and they're boring as well. But they're not just boring, they also lock people in to delivering specific things. Now, I'm not saying that contracts aren't important, they are, because they set expectations and they're necessary if you have a money transaction taking place. But often you get the impression that people are preparing contracts and they're actually preparing for litigation. They're preparing for the worst case rather than working together to try and make something which they're going to be collaborative on and look for win-win situations. So the next tip is to collaborate together, don't work on the contract details. Here we have a picture of a farmer rounding up sheep. The farmer doesn't know which way the sheep are going to turn, to left or right. He, or perhaps she, we don't know from this photograph, has a dog helping. The dog is collaborating in that task of rounding up the sheep. You can also see the horse as well. This farmer's riding a horse. So as they're collaborating as well together, there's an implicit contract here between the farmer and the dog. So the dog knows it's going to get fed at night as long as it does a good job rounding up the sheep. And this isn't the time for the horse to start negotiating about the hay rations for that night. This is the time when you're actually getting on with the task. You don't want to be focusing on the contract when you're actually doing the work. You don't want to mix those two things up. And finally, we often get into a situation where we've become overcommitted to a particular plan. And human projects are ones that are realistic about alternatives. So you may discover that the existing plan and the path you're on isn't working out. Listen to the real world feedback. Listen to what your team are telling you, or if you're a member of a team, tell your project manager that things aren't working out. Look for alternatives. The clever project manager is the one who's looking for alternative approaches and always assessing whether there's a better way. So you have decision points in a project, maybe every week or every month. You come together and you decide, is this working for all of us? You decide whether to persevere with a course of direction or pivot and you move into a different direction. So you persevere and maybe you look over your shoulder, is there a better way? Maybe there is. I'll pivot and move in that direction instead. So an agile project manager is always looking for opportunities to pivot into a better direction or encourage the teams when things are working out well. Lots of people call this contingency planning. So you have a contingency plan, you have alternative routes, alternative ways of doing things so that you can move the team into a different direction. And you encourage the team to think about alternatives rather than being on sometimes they call it a death march. Do you ever hear about that? Where you're going in a particular direction. I was looking for photographs of lemmings throwing themselves off cliffs, but apparently that's an urban legend. They don't really do that. So you're always looking for alternative ways of doing things and encouraging the team to accept that things may change. They don't become overcommitted to a plan as well. And then you have a happier team. In 2001, a group of technical geeks, maybe like this lady at the front here, got together in Colorado and they signed this thing called the Agile Manifesto. And what they wanted to do was improve on project management techniques to make them more human, to put more interaction into projects. In the late 1980s, 1990s, there were lots of big projects going on, especially big IT projects that really didn't work out very well. Maybe hundreds of people working on something that then would get cancelled after many years of development because they carried on that death march of things that didn't work. And haven't we all also seen that in our personal lives? You turn up at a campsite and there's always one family, isn't there? And it's the dad, usually the dad, I'm not being sexist here, who's standing there shouting at the family, telling them to get the tent pegs in straight and put the strings in the right position, and no one's enjoying themselves. And he's lost sight of the fact that actually the objective, the vision of the holiday, the camping holiday, was to enjoy themselves. What he needed to do to motivate his team was explain that actually what his vision of a better future was they have a nice cozy night, that there's going to be rain tonight, and wouldn't it be great if we're nice and dry inside the tent? And the way to do that is to get the tent pegs in straight. Then all the kids will be very enthusiastic and then they'll understand why they're doing something. And that's the human side of project management. So I just encourage you to paint that vision for people on your projects, whether in business or in your personal life, so you can move forward incrementally, deciding with your family or your work colleagues to continue on a good course and persevere, or pivot onto better alternative courses, and take incremental steps forward in this agile way to get real-world feedback to inform those decisions. In that way, you regain that sense of wonder that that little child had at the beginning of my presentation, and you can make your projects, your human projects, a success. Thank you very much.